For anyone who has spent time around concept synergy, done business with Lazaris friends, or had lover or friendship relationships within the community, one observation that you may have is that a Lazaris friend is a little bit more likely to be kooky. And the scientific kind of, or more nuanced version of that might be dissociated or dysregulated, because on the continuum of sanity and insanity, you have everything fitting, the timing being right, words matching objects, objects matching words, objects fitting neatly into objects, intentions, flowing into realization. Everything fitting basically would be a good word, a good definition for sanity. But part of what needs to fit in that paradigm of everything fitting is the individual within their larger community. The individual is a fractal representation of the family. The family is a fractal representation of the individual. If you look closely at an individual, you will understand their entire culture. If you look closely at a culture, you will understand each of its individuals. And some individuals are more integrated, have more integrity with their culture. Now, this is the main reason that a culture, when you think of insane asylums, that type of thing, institutionalizes its people for being different. It criminalizes, institutionalizes, in some way penalizes an individual for being distinct, for being different. And we all can look at the character of a culture by the way it treats its minorities, particularly its disenfranchised minorities. You can see the shadow of America by how the statistics line up with poor Black people relative to rich white people. So you have two metrics of, one is the metric of, well, you have a couple of things. In a culture where, for example, Lazaris talks about, as long as there is light, we will love you. As long as there is white, we will love you. The angels are always white. And I mean, there's no way around that type of thinking, an ideology that establishes white and up and light as the good thing, which naturally means that dark and black and down is the bad thing. Now, we look then at up and down, and it is true, in my experience, that different cultures emphasize different parts of the psyche. And anyone who's seen breakdancing, anyone who's, understands kind of tribal rhythms, etc., I think there's a case to be made that African American ancestry, that someone in Africa is a little bit more likely to be in tune with their body, with rhythm, and that the stereotypical American ideal is a white male intellectual with multiple PhDs. That's up, that's going up. And it doesn't matter how integrated those PhDs are in daily life or in the body, because the symbol, the paper, is more valuable than the experience. So, having established that the mind is more valuable than the body, this is a lie, of course. It has no scientific validation. Having established that light is more valuable than dark, this is also a lie. It has no relevance to anything scientific. Having established that white is better than black, complete cultural fabrication. And having decided that because people invent their own deities through projecting their ideals onto something bigger than themselves, people basically throughout history have looked at what traits are useful for the well-being of themselves and those around them. And at different points in different contexts, different traits seem more valuable, more useful at creating well-being than others. And so, 2,000 years ago in the Christian cult, we have power and knowledge as being, they say all loving. But if you look carefully, it's really power and knowledge that is being elevated. Because the all-loving is to the Christian people. It's really, love is a form of protection from a powerful, knowing God. And a man, of course, because a man in a battle, a male body is stronger than a female body. And so it needs to be male because, you have 100 men fighting and 100 women fighting. And statistically speaking, the male body is going to kill more women than the women kill of men, just hand-to-hand combat. And so in a combative sociopathic culture, we need to have, we want men on our side because they're going to kill, and defend, etc. And so, of course, God then has to be male and has to be really powerful because the king is often in a sociopathic hierarchy, the one who wields the sword better than others. In a wolf pack, the alpha wolf is the one that kills the other wolves or defends and wins the battle. And okay, you get to be the alpha. Why? Are you intelligent? Are you kind? Are you visionary? Are you anything? No, I'm the biggest wolf. And so, anyone who attacks me, I attack them back twice as much. Remember Trump's, art of the deal and all that. What he says is that if anyone hurts him, he hurts them back 5 times more, and then they don't hurt him anymore. It's a wonderful strategy for an abused child in a sociopathic culture to just hurt other people more, and then they'll stop hurting you, and then you get to do what you want. It's a wonderful path to freedom. And so, Trump has been doing this all his life legally. Someone slights his feelings or whatever, and he'll send them a 3-inch, lawsuit. Of all the different ways that he's going to sue them for $50 million. And then usually they'll just print a retraction. But that's basically, why you would want a male to, be at the top deity, the power, the knowledge. And why not a knowledgeable male, and a powerful male? And so the culture then pursues its ideals. We now have more nuclear weapons than we know what to do with. And that's the kind of power we meant, right? If the Russians blow up hundreds of millions of Americans, we'll blow up all of the Russians, right? It's Trump at work. It's America at work. It's the the traumatized reptilian brain at work. And so, we choose our deities based on what's useful as we perceive what's useful to survival, to security, love and belonging, self-esteem, developing our talents and gifts, bringing them abundantly into the world, and becoming part of something bigger than ourselves. And so anyone who's seeking, growing, learning, what are they trying to do? We are all trying to create more sustainable well-being and reduce more chronic and certainly unnecessary suffering. We all want to feel sustainably better. We want to avoid feeling chronically worse. That's our nature. We want to feel better. We don't want to feel worse. And so in the exploration of what's going to do that, there's a wide field of cosmologies. You can invent any pattern of thought that you would like. But you can certainly see the character of a culture by how it treats its most powerless, meaning the people who can exert the least amount of pain, women, most powerless members, which are minorities. Because in a tug of war, in a sociopathic paradigm, you have the majority who's going to pull the minority, right, in a tug of war. It doesn't matter who the people are. It doesn't matter where they're being pulled from. It doesn't matter where the majority is pulling the rope. If 10 people line up with 100 people on a tug of war, the 100 people are going to pull the 10 people if they hold on to the rope, of course. And so that's the dynamic of the large object. When a bowling ball and a pinball collide, the pinball flies off and the bowling ball continues because the pinball is smaller. It's not because the pinball is less intelligent. It's very likely, since the majority is always wrong, that those 100 people will pull the 10 people over a cliff if they carry on, holding a rope, or certainly to a less optimal place. But it doesn't matter. In the law of mass, the majority pushes the minority around. Even if it's bad for the majority and the minority for it to do so, it does it anyway. The minority is not treated out of fear because the majority can win. And that's how you see the character of a culture. You look at what happens in a dark alley when nobody's watching to a minority who cannot defend themselves. And that's where you see, whatever it is that happens there, that's an unfear-based nature of, what occurs. So you see a statistical range of things, but you usually find the worst of human behavior is being directed at a minority that doesn't have rank. So it's not just a minority; it's a powerless minority. So if education has rank, then you find the power abuses happening most to people who don't have a high school degree. And if immigration has rank, then you will find the worst abuses being directed at immigrants. And if maleness has rank, you will find the worst abuses directed to women. And if growing up and having money has rank, you will have the worst abuses directed at the poor. So there is this continuum that's created in the mythos of a culture that says, in this case, white male, rich, educated, American, competent, fit, successful, that's all up at the top. And then, what do you have at the back? Dark, unknown, feminine, black, poor, uneducated, not successful. That's down at the bottom. And so in the simplest form, we say this is good, that's bad. And Lazaris has channeled through a white, rich American male. If he wasn't rich before, he is now. And it is focusing on ideas. You won't find dancing going on at a Lazaris event. You'll find ideas. There's very little focus on feelings. When has Lazaris cried, or invited a grief circle, or done a trauma healing? It's a very cerebral event, and we will love you as long as there's light. Now, in truth, scientifically, this doesn't mean anything because there cannot be light without the counterpoint. In any of you, there cannot be the up without the down. There cannot be the white without the black. There cannot be the rich without the poor. What's the relative point? And so one exists interdependently, codependently with the other. You cannot have one side of a polarity. Any scientist that takes the world and cuts it in half will say that you're nuts for trying to pretend that one half of the orange is better than the other half. The upside, right? That's the best one. The downside of the orange, is not important. And so if we look at difficulty, suffering, kookiness, on the insanity continuum, being a Lazaris friend is a minority. Now, successful iterations of technology get adopted, right? They become the majority. Like 10, 20 years ago, everyone thought cell phones were nonsense, because they were big. Did you really have to make a call right then? Why didn't you just wait till you got home like everyone else? And so cell phones were nuts, right? And they were expensive, $1 or $2 a minute, big, cost $1,000. They were nuts. But cell phones still cost $1,000, but they do 1,000 times more than they did, a while ago. And everyone has them. That's the adoption curve, right? So it goes from successful technologies goes from the minority to the majority. And Lazaris came along before cell phones and has not been adopted. And the question is, part of the question is why? Why has Lazaris fallen off? Meaning Lazaris had a curve, but the people actively pursuing Lazaris, etc., maybe in the 80s, maybe in the 90s, I'm not sure quite what the curve is because concept synergy is suppressing data. It doesn't take any energy to just talk about these things, candidly and look at different, metrics of data. They're all relevant. Concept synergy doesn't believe in data. However, if you would be interested in the data set, you can participate. There's a form below this video that will create the most complex, detailed data set that doesn't exist, right? Because you and I have never once in the entire relationship with concept synergy received a survey. because it's a don't ask, don't tell organization. Their focus is on secrecy and NDAs and, in many cases, shame. And they don't want to focus on that either, because that's the exact opposite of the material that they're selling. Maybe that's why Lazaris isn't talking about it as well. But these points of data are useful. Now, a more accurate question or topic for this is not why are Lazaris friends more likely to be a bit kooky, as much as the challenges of minorities, right? Because to be a Lazaris friend is a minority. You may be the only Lazaris friend that you encounter all month. Or, you can cluster together, and, gather in, an online community. But, if I walk around my neighborhood and, okay, you're from India, you're this, is anyone a Lazaris friend, in the neighborhood? Well, you will find certainly, I remember I did a seminar, once when Lazaris was passing through, I did a seminar. I know what Lazaris is. So why didn't it, what determines whether a technology catches on? Well, a big thing is the network effect. Facebook may be crappy, but if all your friends are on there, you use Facebook, not the new app that has 10% better features that nobody's on. So network effect is a very big determiner. So why are you Christian? The network effect. Why are you talking English rather than inventing your own language? It's the network effect. It's no good having a better technology that nobody's using, because if you did call nobody up on your telephone, your phone would be worthless, except for all the apps that are now more useful than the phone. So the network effect is an important thing. And so a successful technology has to gain market share to gain network effect. And the technology of you create your own reality, which is Lazaris's core technology, is not, is certainly is not having the adoption curve of cell phones. We haven't seen, we haven't seen the adoption of you create your own reality as fast as the adoption of you have a cell phone. Me too. I have a cell phone. I have a cell phone. I have a cell phone, right? So what it suggests, you could say that people are idiots, right? They do create their own reality. They ought to know it, but they're just too dumb, right? You could say people are idiots. Or you could say that cell phones are more intelligent as a technology than a paradigm that says you create your own reality. Because, it doesn't take a lot of explanation to understand the efficiency of picking up a phone anywhere in the world without a wire. But it does take a lot of explanation because, there is a tremendous amount of infrastructure, mentally, psychologically, etc., to have the person who is saying that they create their own reality try and convince you that you create your own reality, even when you don't want to be convinced, and they're having a hard time, convincing you, right? Why? Because they create their own reality, or because they're having a hard time, creating their own reality? And so, you create your own reality, go create someone else who wants to hear about that. Create someone, but no, you, but I don't want to hear it. You haven't created me wanting to hear about this. Why do I have to listen to this? Well, go listen to it. No, you didn't create someone who wanted to listen to another of your Lazaris tapes either, right? So why go? You create your reality, fine. Go create all those people that want to listen to that, and that feel better doing so than not doing so. And you know, there you go. You have another isolated, Lazaris individual. So minorities have a tough time. First of all, they don't have network effect, which if you're an investor, that's the main thing you look for. You don't care if it's a faster search, this or that. Bing has been trying to catch up with Google, but Google's got more network effect. And so if you're a scientist and you're understanding even the efficiency of flow, the efficiency of energy, network effect is big. My sister joined a fundamentalist Christian cult. These are all cults, the American cult, the Lazaris cult, the fundamentalist Christian cult. It was so wonderful. She got a car for $1. She wouldn't have got that at the Lazaris cult. She wouldn't have got that not at the Christian cult, but she got a car for $1. She got love and belonging, adoption and community. She got support for her marriage. Try to get support for your marriage, in the Lazaris cult. It could, there's no counseling and this and that and the other, and help you understand all the ways to stay together, etc. So I had to hand it to her. She's got a better network, right? It doesn't matter if her kooky ideas are more kooky than my kooky ideas. She's got a good network, right? She got a car for $1. She got marriage support. She got a husband within her network. Now, it's difficult for a Lazaris person to find a Lazaris person that they are attracted to and that agrees with their version of the Lazaris material and is fun to, it's fun to be with and has relationship skills. Now, one of the reasons it's hard to have relationship skills as a minority is you don't have as much regulation and integration. So integration is part of the continuum of sanity and insanity. If your words have nothing to do with your behavior, if your behavior has nothing to do with your feelings, if your words have nothing to do with other people's words, you are insane. You have no integrity. You have no integration. But if your words, your actions, and your behavior all line up nicely, if your inner world and your outer world are a mirror, you've got a lot of integrity. Now, then the question is, what's your intelligent quotient? Because the most intelligent person consumes very little time, money, and natural resources to create large amounts of sustainable well-being. And the dumb person consumes large amounts of time, money, and natural resources and creates lots of chronic and unnecessary suffering. And it's dumb because that's not what they want. That's not what they say they want. Nobody says, I'd like to work really, really, really hard and cut down a lot of forests so that I can be miserable for the rest of my life, for all time. That's what I'd like to be, miserable. And I'd like to make as many people around me miserable as possible. And I'd just like to do that. And so I'm working hard. I've got, I'm mostly miserable. The people around me are also mostly miserable. But if I keep going a little bit harder, right, cut down a few more forests and, spend more money, got to work hard, pay to play, then we'll get really miserable and we'll have sustained, chronic unnecessary suffering indefinitely. Oh, you're starting to get happy, let's go work on that. So nobody's doing that as a conscious intention. Why? Because it's human nature to want to feel good and not to feel bad. And so whatever we're doing, and however where we find ourselves on this intelligence continuum, that's the goal. And in a dysfunctional network effect, you have to do crazy, dumb things to get approval from your network. If all the girls want a sociopath and you're an empath, then to get the girl, you've got to show a little bit more cutting wit, because in a sociopathic network, there is a sociopathic hierarchy, right? And so the cool jerk is more likely to get the girl than the sensitive, blubbering empath. Because in a sociopathic environment, you're climbing a sociopathic hierarchy. And the one who is cool, not the one who is warm, the one who is cold, not the one who is open, is going to ascend that hierarchy and get the ice girl. And that's viewed as superior. That's viewed as ascension in high school, for example, in a sociopathic culture where love and belonging are in short supply, and where security of survival socially and culturally is a scarce resource, which we're talking about cultural competence. So Lazaris person is going to be a minority, less than a 1% minority. I don't know what the statistics are, but certainly it's less than 100 million Lazaris friends. In a cult, in a globe of billions. So you've got minority. But you've also got hierarchy. Even Lazaris will say, you wouldn't talk out loud, in the morning tape. He'll say, today's going to be filled with wonder. Today's going to be, and he said, if that's not appropriate in your cult, to say that, then say it in your mind, right? And if you're fingering a crystal and you're in a business meeting, that's not appropriate. So you finger it under the table. And Penny worked hard to hide Jach's gayness. Why? Because we're in a cult that's homosexual phobic, and so there is a cost to concealment, number one. But the biggest cost of concealment is a lack of integrity, a lack of integration. Your heart, mind, and body is not the same as someone who's a proud chauvinist. They're not hiding their chauvinism because they're a majority, right? They're not hiding their cell phones because they're not ashamed of a cell phone. And for the most part, a Lazaris friend is, not going to say, how could you use a cell phone? How terrible, But the person using the cell phone may say, what, you're one of those crystal freaks, And so you have a distinct minority, meaning less than 1% of your cult around you is a Lazaris friend, working actively with Lazaris. You also have a declining, technology, meaning the vast majority of people that I run into, that I say, do you know Lazaris? The response, if they say yes, the biggest response is no, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if they say yes, they will say that, wasn't he around in the 80s, or wasn't he around? So you have a tapering off effect of kind of a fad kind of phenomena. But you don't have that with cell phones, right? Now, you have to then believe that people are nuts, or that the material isn't intelligent enough, meaning it doesn't deliver more sustainable well-being per unit of energy expended. And you just look at tests on this. If someone goes to the John Gottman Institute and works on their marriage for, let's say, 10 days, and someone does Lazaris work for 10 days, whose marriage is better? If it's Lazaris's marriages are better, then more and more people, therapists and stuff, refer clients without being embarrassed, to Lazaris. If it's John Gottman, then the John Gottman Institute grows. Now, the John Gottman Institute has been growing. It's doing empirical data on a variety of things. And I would listen to a John Gottman tape anytime over a relationship tape about Lazaris. Why? Because every time I've listened to a John Gottman tape about trust, or about this, or about that, or about the secrets of successful marriage, or this or that, every single time I listen on Audible, because that's a 10 times better platform than the Concept Synergy platform. You get to do download, you get to save bookmarks, all kinds of wonderful features that are not available on Concept Synergy streaming and tapes and stuff. So I would listen to a John Gottman tape because every time I do, I've measured it, my relationship goes up 20%, right? I listen and I say, I'm going to go do that right now, right? And I go into the house and I have this conversation with my partner, and the relationship gets better, right? Well, my first relationship was with a long-term Lazaris friend for 20 years, right? We're not talking 10 days, we're talking 20 years. And she would say, why are you creating that? Why are you doing that, right? One of the habits of Lazaris friends is to ask other people why they're creating the reality that they don't like, right? It doesn't work. It's not even consistent. Meaning, what you're saying is that after 20 years of working with Lazaris, you don't believe that you create your own reality. You believe that you can manipulate other Lazaris friends into why they don't create something differently. How could you believe that they could create something differently if you can't? And if you can create something differently, why aren't you doing it rather than telling your partner to do it? You see, it doesn't even make any sense. Why would that virus spread? Versus you have to look at trust dynamics and talk about difficult topics. Well, why would you talk about a difficult topic with Lazaris? Because it's easier to succeed than it is to fail. But Lazaris isn't succeeding, right? Lazaris is waning. You see that? You see how much insanity there has to be in just that? Like, what would you have? How much energy would you have to spend to resolve that issue as a Concept Synergy employee or as a devoted Lazaris friend? How much energy? Oh, you'd bring out the whole list of tapes. Well, there's this and this one, this one. 5 days later, you're exhausted with, this. You missed the 7th step of the receiving thing. Yes, you did the perceiving thing, but you missed the 7th step of the perceiving things. It's like, hello, off in your own world there. I'm actually going to have a crucial conversation that improves my marriage 20%. How about that? Oh, does that work? Well, you're the one creating your own reality. Are you, what have you decided? But you see, it's you have expensive energy consumption, mostly psychologically, because you're not dancing these things out. So you can be fat and well-versed in all of this. You can't be fat and well-versed in African dances. I mean, they're not dumb. They don't just say, this is the dance there and watch it on TV and listen to it on tape. They dance it, right? So you're not fat if you're well-versed in 100 African dances. But you can be versed in 1,000 Lazaris techniques and 1,000 steps, and you can still be fat, because there's no point in the entire Lazaris material where Lazaris gets off his chair and does a jig. Is that higher than human or less than human? Doesn't Lazaris create his own reality? Why not create a reality of let's get a vibe on? Do something, a better vibe than human, not we're better, we're more than you, therefore we can't move the body. Doesn't sound like more. More is inclusive, right? More is beyond, not separate from. And so there's all kinds of these types of things that you've got to figure out answers to. And they're not easy answers. You've got to come up with arcane answers. Well, maybe. Why maybe? Remember the Christians? Why is Christianity dying out? Even with their great network effect. Well, maybe God's plan is for this and this. And it's just so boring compared to John Gottman. It's like, how about we talk about this and our relationship improves? So you have a dying out of the active relationships with Lazaris, which is coincided with Lazaris stating, as almost all teachers state, although John Gottman is not stating this, as that this is the most, we are the highest of the high, basically. Once you cut the world in half and say this half is better than that half, when we're always the best of the good half, right? So Lazaris is the resonance is the best reality creation, the only one, and we're the best resonance of all time, even though we don't have time. If we did have time, for all time, we're the best one, And so it's like, so where's your network effect, your crescendoing network effect? It was easier for you to succeed at that than it was to fail, but you failed anyway? Lazaris, hello, do you not create your own reality? Are you weaker? Are Lazaris friends copying you, Lazaris? You talk, because Lazaris doesn't say we create our own reality, and then talk about the realities they're creating. Lazaris says you create your own reality, you create your own reality, and then explains why you didn't create it properly because of all the techniques you didn't do right. And that's exactly what a Lazaris spouse will do. The Lazaris spouse doesn't say, I create my own reality, ignore you, and create wonderful things. And here's how I created this today, and here's how I created that today, and here's how I created this today. Because I create my own reality. And here's how you are my loving spouse, because, I wanted a loving spouse, and there you are, and you're just absolutely perfect for me. No, the Lazaris spouse follows Lazaris's motif. You copy the parent. You don't do what they say. So Lazaris says you should do these techniques, but what Lazaris does is tells you that you create your reality without talking at all about what they're creating. Lazaris, this is a relationship. It's not working very well. Why don't you talk about why it's not working very well? Why you created that? No, Lazaris is not going to do that. Lazaris is going to tell you why it's not working well and why you created that. Lazaris is going to give his power away to you. Just like the average Lazaris friend will do to the average Lazaris friend. Why don't you listen to the tape? I'm not going to listen to the tape and discover why my friend is giving me whispers of dysfunctional Lazaris material, because that would be me responding to the fact that my best friend is miserable. I don't want to do that. No. Because I don't believe I create my own reality. But if I can just convince you that it's your fault, that you're not doing that, and here's another tape, just listen to this one as well, then then I don't have to feel like, what? What? So now you have a friend failing to do the right thing with the Lazaris material, or not your friend anymore because he got tired of being shunted off to techniques and tapes without having a good listening ear. Because Lazaris doesn't practice listening well, he practices talking well. So how likely are you, if you've learned from Lazaris, to be a great listener? Lazaris has only talked 99% of the time, right? So you have a lot to deal with if you are a Lazaris friend. You have to deal with the fact that your life, to a large extent, does not work better or worse than any other people. You know, I mean, it may be we live in a world where it is a minority of people who experience high levels of sustainable well-being, maybe 1 or 2%. It's a minority of people. And those are minorities of Christians, of Buddhists, of atheists, of Lazaris people, of whatever. They're a minority. And it's somewhat dogmatic. See, you also have the kind of challenge of dogma, because you can get into an argument with a Lazaris friend easy. And yet they're arguing that you create your reality, etc. And you ask them, do you want an argument? And they say no. So why are you in one? And it says, why am I in one? You know, it doesn't hold up very well. If you're doing cell phone technology and you say, do you want to be on a cell phone call when you're on a cell phone call? It's like, yeah, I dialed the number, I want to be here, and I can hang up when I don't want to be here. And so, yes, I want to be on this call. Or you could say, no, I don't want to be in the call. Okay, end the call. And you click buy, and that's it. You know, and so it's not so easy, you know, dealing with, with areas related to Lazaris. Now, weak network effects always lead to a certain amount. You can't practice. It's like, how could you be a great tennis person if nobody else played tennis? You know, so you don't have a network effect. That's one part. So most of your world is not playing tennis with you. That's one problem. The other problem is Lazaris is the only paid, well, not the only, we've had prostitutes our entire, civilization. But Lazaris is a paid friendship. Now you've got to figure out why you're paying for your best friendship. We're not your teacher, we're your friend, now pay for it. Why am I doing that? You don't need money, Lazaris. There's plenty of people. You could have channeled through hundreds of thousands of people, and they would have all donated an hour of their time. I'd donate an hour. We could have lots of things, and we wouldn't have to do this, but no. And then you say, well, Lazaris, you could be talking inside our own heads, perhaps. And then we wouldn't need channels, but no. You're saying why? We created that, but we didn't create Jach, because we don't want a friend in our head, but we do, or what is it? You've got to deal with that. So there's a lot of dogma, and dogmas are problematic. They're all over the place. So this is not unique to concept synergy dogma, but it is in many ways a dogma that you create your reality. Why? Well, let's just say I adopt this. That's not my belief. My belief is that I have an influence on reality that correlates to my skill set. I don't ask, why did I create a sunny day? I don't ask, why does the earth exist? Why did I bring the earth into being today? I don't ask those things because I've never noticed that asking those things has any difference on what's happening. But why am I making this video instead of going to my job site? I can ask that. I don't always make this video, and I could just as easily be on my job site. Why am I talking about this instead of going out and making money? I can ask myself that. And that's a good question. And I have influence over that. Well, one is I'm just waking up and I want to give my body a chance to move before being out in the bright weather. Okay, I can understand that. And another is I had this thought on waking up in the morning, and it's always nice to have more integrity, meaning I had the thought, so I talked about it, versus I had the thought and I thought, oh, that's a very unspiritual thing to do, which is suppressing, right? So it's generally, there's more energy in creating than suppressing. And so the thought was there. I thought that's an interesting thought. And others may get benefit. Why record it rather than write it in my diary? Well, I've since YouTube is free, I've turned YouTube into my diary in many ways, because you should see, since I was 14 and Lazaris said, do a diary and write and all this, I have suitcases and suitcases of writing that nobody has ever seen. And I just thought, well, what if all those suitcases were online and everyone could see them? Maybe people would have a little bit more into me, you see. Maybe if they see me clearly, they will see themselves more clearly. Makes sense. We're, genetically similar, culturally similar, and maybe people will feel less isolated if other people are sharing thoughts that may have crossed their minds and explored them. So, well, why not? And also, I don't like repeating myself, and so, if I've made a video about something and somebody asks me, if it's a good hour explanation, I can just say, here, watch the video. If you're interested, and if you're not, then don't make small talk and make me talk for an hour. And so, that's why I'm doing this. Now that makes sense. But Lazaris has said things like, you create it all, and if you do a 33-second technique and you don't get a new car in 3 days, well, it's because you didn't want it. Now that starts to get pretty dogmatic. Why? Because you say, okay, could Lazaris, could you find me one person out of the room that wants a new car in 3 days? One? Anyone? Around the world? Anyone at all want a new car for doing a 33-second technique? Oh, you had this one story about someone who almost had a new car, and then they saw their neighbor get the new car after doing the 33-second. They almost got it. That's your one story of your technique that works, Lazaris? Someone almost got a new car back in the 80s? That's it? But everyone is supposedly not wanting a new car because they're payoffs, and that's why your techniques work. Oh my goodness, Lazaris, that's so dogmatic, right? Where's the data, right? It's not piecing together, right? It's more of a, Jesus loves you. Okay, why did your Jesus friend die? Don't ask that. Right? See, it's a don't ask, don't tell policy. That's the problem with dogmas. They don't work very well, and they ultimately wane because, most of the atheists. I just wrote to the author of The Believing Brain. He talks about his girlfriend dying after he prayed to God, so he became an atheist. It's like, I'm not. At a certain point of pain, believing a dogma is just untenable. And so people throw it out and they turn to data, right? They turn to science that works. So hardcore atheism is kind of a backlash against the more kooky sides, the more dogmatic sides of, some form of idealized deity that supposedly killed their girlfriend for mysterious reasons. Doesn't work, right? So, if my first lover who'd, worked with Lazaris for 20 years had improved our relationship with the Lazaris material, right? had, brought in, warm, fuzzy, welcoming feelings, and, hadn't played, more of a bullying dynamic, well, then I would be in love with Lazaris, right? Because I'd say, like, this is wonderful. This feels great. That's what I wanted, was to feel great. And I feel great because, this Lazaris person and these Lazaris people and Lazaris, made me feel great. So that's what I wanted, so I'll do more of this, right? But a Lazaris magical circle kicked me out of their house because I have Asperger's syndrome and say things, whatever's on my mind. And this was very politically incorrect in this particular magical Lazaris circle. So they kicked me out of the circle. Now, they didn't tell me the way that, a good communicator would, do so in a way that would lead to understanding. There wasn't win-win negotiation or anything. They just, kicked me out of their circle. So this is not new. I mean, Lazaris talks about Christianity being formed because they were pissed off at the Romans for not letting them do this and this and this. So we have a whole Christian cult for thousands of years because, the main cult wasn't very nice to the minority cult, right? And so we have, this dynamic doesn't happen when people are incompetently and abusively pushed out of the circle. It's a scientific phenomena that anything that is pushed out of the circle and or abused or dishonored in some way undermines the circle, because it's not a genuine circle. The genuine circle includes all things and an intelligent relationship with all things. Now, incompetent circles, biased circles, highly judgmental circles, etc., are always cutting bits of themselves and trying to push them out. But they weaken themselves, right? Arguably, this type of thought process strengthens any organization, etc., that it's a part of. But if you push out critical thinking and directness, you weaken what remains, because there's a place for critical thinking and there's a place for honesty and candor and directness. There's a place for that. And if you don't understand the place for that because you're a chauvinist and you think that some parts of the psyche are better than others, because you're a dogmatist and you think this part is good and that part isn't spiritual, right? If you buy into, Lazaris will love you as long as there's light, but not as long as there's darkness. It doesn't work very well. It ultimately collapses, meaning that which is pushed out and buried and suppressed and denied ultimately undermines the false circle that is based on the premise of denying data. So the more concept synergy works to hide its shame, its data, the thing it cannot accept, right? Because if concept synergy can accept all the data, then there's no problem. Hey, you want to criticize Lazaris? Have at it. Let's create a special area in the forum criticizing Lazaris. Anyone who wants to criticize Lazaris, let's go and criticize Lazaris here, and then we can talk about it. Or, oh, that's a good criticism. Well, that's great. You're right. That could be seen that way. What can you do about it? Is there anything good you can do with that that would improve your life? But if you are shame-based and afraid, you not only can't have a criticizing Lazaris section in the Lazaris forum, you can have a poetry section, you can have a politics section, you can argue about that. But what's the real politics in the room, right? It's the relationship with Lazaris, right? Isn't that where the real politics are? In the Jach and Lazaris forum? But we can't talk about those politics? You see, if you actually believe that there's something that can hold up, and I do, I think if you pick apart all of these things and thoroughly criticize every one of them, I think there's still something there that withstands the criticism. But half the Lazaris people don't know it's there because they're so afraid that of their own criticisms and negative thought that their whole paradigm is so weak because it's so dysfunctional. I've been depressed for 20 years and I believe I create my own reality? Give me a fucking break. I don't believe I create my own reality. And it's cruel to be depressed for 20 years and ask myself what my payoffs are. It's not working, right? And it's cruel to pay money to a friend who says it is, but who doesn't listen to the data that says it isn't. That's sadistic, right? You would not design that for your friend. I'm going to ignore you for 20 years. I'm going to ignore your pain and suffering, and I'm going to tell you you created it for 20 years, and I'm going to tell you that my techniques work. Nobody would do that. But Lazaris, right? Lazaris doesn't listen. Lazaris doesn't ask. Lazaris doesn't share the data. Lazaris will not talk about large sections of the data. Why have they created a decline in their friendships? You know, why do so many Lazaris marriages, etc., fail or have more shame in them than average? Why is Concept Synergy such a crappy service provider relative to, I don't know if it's relative to average, but certainly relative to excellence? Why? You know, what's going on there, Lazaris? Why did you do that? For fun? It was more easy to succeed? This makes no sense. So if you are paying to make yourself crazy while isolating yourself and are afraid of your own negativity, how are you afraid of your own negativity? Well, Lazaris has come right out and said that every single problem in your life comes from self-importance or self-pity. So you feel self-pity. Why? Because your techniques aren't working, right? Does anyone not feel self-pity when they spend tens of thousands of dollars on crystals and this and that and the other, and they're doing all this stuff, and then their neighbor gets a promotion who hasn't heard of Lazaris? They don't feel self-pity? But see, if Lazaris shames self-pity, an emotion, a feeling, all your problems come from self-pity and self-importance. I thought my self-pity came from the dogma that isn't working. That's what I thought was happening. So are you the source of all my problems, Lazaris? Because I wasn't feeling self-pity until I bought all these things and then my neighbor got a promotion. Are you the source of my problems? And self-importance? You're the creator of it all, but don't feel self-important? Where's my self-importance coming from? Is it an insane grandiosity? You know, it talks about how potent we are, and dreamers, and elders, and ancient ones, and light bearer. What are all the ones? Ancient ones, great ones, light. What are they? Anyway, great beings, right? You're a great being, but don't feel self-important because that's the source of all your problems. Well, you know, this is nuts. It's absolute nuts. and you will be cast out of your Lazaris community for pointing this out. Okay, so could we do a statistical analysis of someone who's watched their life trajectory and their marriage trajectory and someone who did Lazaris? Is there any correlation? Any? Now, I'll take a 5% correlation. You know, but you do have to wonder, okay, so how much is that 5% improvement gonna cost? Oh, you'll have to spend $60,000 on crystals. Okay, check. Have to buy 1,000 tapes. Okay, check. $20,000, whatever it is. So then, and you have to go to various seminars. Okay, check. And then you have to do the morning meditation and the evening meditation and work on guilt and work on. Wait a minute. And don't look at your negative ego. Who's that saying that? Is that you, or is that your negative ego? I thought it was me. No. There's a buzz. There's this horrible thing in you, buzzsaw trying to kill you. Better not be that saying, who's doing this? Oh, I guess I better listen to the ego tape again, right? Because I wouldn't want to be doing this in negative ego, right? You see how nuts this is? Meanwhile, the other person is learning their career. That's why they got the promotion. You mean it didn't have anything to do with the 33-second technique? No, they weren't all uptight, anxious that they left one of the techniques out of the 27th process of the 1980s. And they weren't so grandiose as to think it was all about them. They understood that their boss was having a hard time getting a coder, and they studied coding 6 hours a day until they were the best coder, and their boss thankfully gave them the job. That's how they got a promotion. Yeah, but I did a 33-second technique. And? Well, I'm a failed metaphysician. That's why, because I don't love myself. And? Well, now I'm punishing myself. And? Well, I'm going to go listen to that tape. And? Well, I didn't do it well enough because I'm still punishing myself. They've still got the promotion. And? Is it working, right? Is it working? We don't want to look at this data set. If you are afraid of the data, you don't believe it. If you don't believe it and you're afraid of data, then everything's a threat. Oh gosh, stay away from Dane, he's in his negative ego. Stay away from this, stay away from that. Don't talk to this. That's probably my child, right? I'm afraid of my child. I'm afraid of my adolescent. I'm afraid of my negative ego. I'm afraid of my nemesis. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid I sounded rude there. I'm an isolated minority living a dogma that has very little to do with what I actually experience in daily life, much like most dogmas. With my best friendship being a prostitute in a culture that shames prostitution. If you had to pay for your sex or your friend, you lose rank. They didn't really love you. You had to do this and this. And then I have to sign an abuse contract with Concept Synergy, promising never to tell anyone anything that happened, or I will lose my relationship with eternity because we love each other and we're a spiritual family. My goodness, this is nuts. Get out there. Find things that work a little better. Now, when you can create what it is you can create, it's not hard to create money in America. If you will study money books, it's hard if you'll study Lazaris tapes, but if you will create, study investing and study whatever it is. One of my running feuds with a former male friend was he was always ashamed that his income wasn't going up. It was a Lazaris friend. He was always ashamed. So he would do various Lazaris techniques. And I said, please get an employee. You cannot grow your revenue without employees. He didn't want to get an employee. He wanted to do Lazaris techniques that didn't work, that he shamed himself for. That's not going to spread. I'm not going to tell the next business person, oh, if you only do Lazaris techniques rather than study business, your revenue is going to go up. It doesn't lead to good relationships. That's a strain on my relationship. It's like, come on, that's nuts. Stop it. Do this. No. I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing for 20 years that isn't working. You want to shake them? You want to wake them up? Have them realize they actually do have a little bit of power to not shame themselves over Lazaris? How about that? You could do that. No, you're not going to create large sums of money doing this. You haven't done it before. You're not doing it now. And statistically, you're not going to do it in the future. But you could set down the Lazaris tapes a bit and do this. And then once you have lots of money, you can go back to the Lazaris tapes because they're fun. If you like the Lazaris tapes, go ahead, do them because they're fun. Not because you're a bad, failed metaphysician. Yeah, we really need more guilt, failure, and shame, right? Well, it's all over the place in the Lazaris community. Lazaris will not address it in the room because it doesn't look good politically, right? How many people feel shame? How many people feel guilt? How many people feel fear after? How many times have you done the fear tape? How many times have you done the shame tape? And we're going to sit here and tell you that our techniques work when 90% of the room is chronically failing in large areas of their life for decades? I don't think Lazaris would have the gall if everyone saw the statistics. So you have isolation is a necessary component. Have your own private process. Don't tell anyone about your personal experience. This is your reality. Just keep this for yourself. This is important for you. Don't talk to other people. And yet, the studies show that if you want to have dreams, if you get 200 people together, that if instead of listening to the reincarnation of Atlantis, if Lazaris had techniques and they danced and they talked and set up into 5-person groups and then said, who has a dream that they're excited about? I want to go skydiving. I've never done that before, and I'm not, it's just a little overwhelming. Who wants to help this person go skydiving, right? I will. Okay, great. Go off and help this person go skydiving. Next workshop, report back. How was your dream, right? That works. So why isn't Lazaris doing what works? Why isn't Lazaris creating a reality that works? Well, Lazaris doesn't feel like talking about that. And I'm not going to pay him to give a long explanation about why I'm not creating that. When what I'm interested in is, why isn't Lazaris creating that? And interested in their own creation for free, right? Why do you have to pay Lazaris to help him create his reality? Because in any relationship, there's a relay. And a competent psychologist will not encourage you to shunt the focus to just one person. You've been in a relationship with Lazaris for decades. How's it going? Why are you in that relationship, Lazaris? Why are you in that relationship, right? Penny's dead of morbid obesity. Is that where you want to end up? It's obviously no guarantees, right? So where do you want to go with this? But I would say that it's much easier, in my experience, to have strong network effects in different areas. Create a successful business. Create a successful relationship. Study, John Gottman, find who's getting good results and who's willing to publish the data. John Gottman is. Lazaris and Concept Synergy are not. In my own experience, there's not, I have yet to meet the great idyllic, Lazaris relationship or the great idyllic Lazaris business, or individual for that matter. And so my view is that everything has a place and a dosage point. There's a toxic dosage point, and there's a medicinal dosage point. And part of the challenge is to figure out, okay, this person is medicinal at this dose, but they're getting a little sickening at this dose, and they're toxic at this dose. And I'd say the same with this. You figure out your dose of this type of stuff. Don't make listening to me your life. Don't let it distract you from something interesting. But if it helps you wake up in a certain way, if it helps you feel empowered, if you go out and read a John Gottman book and your relationship goes up 20%, that's good. Use that dose. Figure that out, right? Do tests. What's the right dose of this and this and this? And go in and do it. Go and do it. It's important to get out of any dogma. For many, it seems Lazaris is that dogma. Now, if you are isolated, if you fail more than normal, if you have redirected an unusual amount of money to static assets like crystals that, my neighborhood never started glowing after spending $20,000 on a concept synergy crystal. This is a lovely crystal. But imagine $20,000 invested in Bitcoin around the time, around the time of buying a $20,000 crystal. Well, maybe the neighborhood would be glowing, if I gold painted the neighborhood. So if you shunt resources into an area that doesn't have as high yield as another area, you will suffer more. In a culture that shames you for failing and suffering, if you're suffering more, you will get more cultural shame and you'll have more secrecy and failure. And when you are in a monopoly relationship with a place like Concept Synergy that treats you poorly, where things aren't working, but you know that you'll be abused if you point it out, maybe even shamed or punished, you feel more isolated and your value goes down. Because anyone who cares about themselves and their friends might talk to Concept Synergy about this. Hey, Concept Synergy, what's going on here? What do you think is going on? Why don't we gather data? Let's do a survey. But when they are rudely and abusively rebuffed by Concept Synergy for the audacity of suggesting thinking or data or loving people enough to learn what's working and not working, then what's wrong with me that I'm spending all this money to be abused more than average? Safeway treats me better. If I tell Safeway, hey, this lettuce is moldy, Safeway doesn't tell me to get out of my negative ego. Safeway apologizes and gives me a fresh head of lettuce or gives me a refund, right? That's Safeway, right? But it's a synergy to do this and this and this, right? Doesn't work, does it? You're going to feel crappy. Why aren't I worth more than this? Good question. Why? But you do have the ability to stop funding Concept Synergy. And you do have the ability to protest. And you do have ability to talk freely on YouTube or any other place about your experience and get a little bit of sanity. So far, all of the response to these videos have been concurrent or have been kind of supportive and, yeah, that's my experience and this and that and the other. So there's definitely a little bit reduction in isolation, right? So that's isolation is a toxicity. Insanity is a toxicity. Dogma is a toxicity. Abusive monopolies are a toxicity. Going round and round in a self-referential loop that doesn't work, is obviously not very good. And being afraid of one's own feelings and afraid of talking about it is another deep toxicity and a belief that doesn't work. And so well, that gives you, those are all things in your control. But admittedly, you've got some hooks into you because you've spent years or decades believing this is the best thing and fighting all the things that look to the other side, this way and that way and the other, and been around other people doing the same thing. So it's not going to be very easy for you to say, well, maybe some of that was a waste of time, some of that was out of balance. I did it at a toxic level rather than a medicinal level. And then, of course, you have to find a new thing that works better, right? Because that's, of course, one of the reasons why cults form is someone says this works. Oh, thank goodness. I don't know what works. And you say it works. Great, I'll do what you say. But for how long, to what degree, before I say, well, maybe I have to do it for myself. Maybe I actually have to create my reality. And maybe my reality isn't sitting around watching hundreds of tapes and videos about Lemuria and this and that, but doing this and doing this and doing this and measuring my well-being, and my well-being's up 10%, I'll do more of that, and do experiments, right? And discover how to create more beauty and well-being sustainably with less energy over time, and see where that goes.